welcome to Always Growing. I'm Heidi.
And I'm Dave.
Always Growing is 20 marriage conversations to help us grow. So Dave and I wanted to celebrate our 20th anniversary for our marriage this summer with you by having conversations and inviting you to have conversations with us about our marriage and about us as individuals living in marriage and growing together day by day. So today, our first topic is same and different. And so we're going to talk about those two things and how they work in marriage. The first thing that I want to talk about is how we kind of connect originally in a relationship because of similarities. So we look at each other or we meet and we're like, oh, that's cool. I'm like that too. Oh, what about you? Yeah, me too. And that kind of gets the pheromones rolling and all that stuff. And there's a chemistry and a connection. And so what is the same about your marriage or each of the people in your marriage? You know, what kinds of things do you connect on that are similar? So Dave, what do you think some of the things that are similar between the two of us are?
Well, I think we figured it out later, the exact thing that was similar, but it was like quality time, spending time together. Mm-hmm. And that's really cool, except then when you have different ideas
of how to spend the time,
then the quality time. Yeah, what are you going to be doing? What is quality?
Yeah, that's true.
Is the question, but
yeah, and I think that came out in our early dating life and our early, just even friendship before we were even close to dating, was we were always the last people sitting around at a meal eating together, and all of our friends had gone off to do other things, and we still wanted to hang out. You know, that's how quality time kind of came out.
And that was like before we were dating. It was just for kicks because we like to talk. So.
We like to hang out and have a cup of coffee together. And so then I think we also both enjoy the outdoors a lot. That's a similar thing. We did a lot of camping and we like to kayak or just go for a walk. Dave is like...
I'm smiling because I'm like, Heidi doesn't always like the outdoors, but like...
Okay.
She does pretty much. There's occasional where it's like, there's a lot of bugs or such.
Yeah, come talk to me when you've had dengue fever, and then you will have a relationship with outdoors.
Okay,
Anyway, okay, so this is how these marriage conversations will go. Dave and I have a lot to share as far as our relationships go. So let's kind of think about then differences. So what are some ways that we are different in our marriages? What is different about one another? Because I think this is the hidden secret about how we connect with someone when we first meet them too. So usually we're attracted to things that are similar, but we're also attracted to things that are different. So when I first met you, I was like, wow, he's really patient. Like that is not something I am. And so I'm really interested in that. And then we'll talk about how that shows up later in marriage in a very interesting way. But how are some ways that you are different with your spouse, from your spouse? And Dave, how do you think, what are some ways that we're different?
Let's see. We, well, definitely don't agree on like how the furniture should be placed in our house.
Okay, just even, I think you could probably just stop at furniture. Like we have a lot of different
true, like
opinions
what it should be, look like, or feel like.
Where it would go.
Yeah, all the things involved with furniture.
Yes,
Totally
spatial
different.
Arrangements,
Yes.
Very different.
Maybe that's pretty common, I don't know.
Right,
because
it seems
every
silly.
person has a very unique perception of how they would like to live in their home, I think.
Mm-hmm. But you don't really know that, and living together isn't necessarily going to help with that. It's just going to unveil it. But I think it says something that we've been married 20 years and we're still a little bit like, I don't like the way that furniture is rearranged.
I got my camo chair, but it's not in our house. It's in my office. So
let's not talk about the camo chair.
Well, I'm just saying.
No,
different.
it's good. It is good. Yeah, Dave would like a camouflage chair, if you don't know what camo is.
Yes.
But like, I do not want that. I don't want to own that.
That would be very bad.
Very different, yeah. So I wrote this article for CPH about 3 years ago called Naked and Unashamed, and it's about the fact that marriage should be a place where we can be different people, because we were having an ongoing discussion that kept popping up in our marriage, and it was about
tattoos.
It was about tattoos. And may sound silly to you, or it may not sound silly to you, but for us, it was kind of an ongoing conversation that wasn't resolved. And we all have conversations like that in our marriage. But this one was a little bit unique because at some point, the conversation hit a wall where I started to feel like, oh my goodness, we are such different people. Like it felt like this little microcosm issue for a bigger idea that we were so different. And how in the world were we going to do this marriage as different people? And so that really unveiled that to me. And so I really had to dig into, what is marriage about then? Is it okay to be different? Or were we supposed to be on the same page about everything? So do you have some thoughts on that, Dave, before we share the Bible passage today?
I think that it was something that where it just kept on, it wasn't so much about, there was nothing specific that was leading us to talk about this issue. It was just an issue that we talked about, and it would seem like we always ended up in different places. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like, I don't think the conversations don't have to be like, we need to make a decision. Mm-hmm. It's just a topic that you disagree on, I think is probably enough to say about it.
That keeps reappearing. And it wasn't like the conversations were always super intense either. And you've probably all had those conversations where they take an intense turn. And this one just kept coming up and there was no good solution. We legitimately thought very differently about this idea of tattoos and whether we should have them or could have them or whatever. And so we are both pretty flexible people. So it was surprising to us that it kept coming up again and again. One passage that helped me with this same and different idea was Ephesians 2:10. Ephesians 2:10. And many of you are probably familiar with Ephesians 2:8 and 9. Our labradoodle would like to be in the marriage conversation. Ephesians 2:8 and 9 is pretty common, so you can look at the context a little bit. But Ephesians 2:10 says, "We are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." That's a little bit of a different translation. You can look it up in your own Bible and you might get something different. But the point is that we are each his workmanship, that we're each created by him to do the things that he's created for us to do. And this passage just reminded me, number one, it's wrapped in grace, right? It's one of the most famous grace passages in the Bible. But also that Dave is God's workmanship to be him and to do Dave things. And Heidi is God's workmanship to be Heidi and do Heidi things. And we are created together in our marriage in God's workmanship, growing together to do Dave and Heidi things. And so we're going to have all of those pieces. We're going to have the things that look very different in each of us. And then we're going to have the things that are similar or that we work on and work through together. And so that was really comforting to me, that we, especially because Dave and our lives, Dave and Heidi's lives, are pretty enmeshed. Like we both do some work in the church. We both do a lot of the daytime things together. And so getting to a place where we were okay with identifying some stuff that we were a little bit different on. And that could be pretty intense stuff, like maybe voting differently. Some couples, might have political conversations that are different. We want to be on the same page about our religious beliefs because that seeps into so much else. But what are your tattoo discussions, I guess? What are the things that it's okay to be a little bit different on, and to let the conversation come forward, and then also to leave the conversation, and then to let it come forward and to leave the conversation. So do you have any, I know when we were talking about the other day, Dave, you had a couple tips about, not getting stonewalled, not letting the conversation just hit a wall, but also kind of talking about it a little bit more. Do you have any suggestions for people on that?
Well, I was thinking about that, sometimes you got to give it a break, like a conversation. You don't have to keep talking about it constantly. But on the other hand, I just kind of feel like it's healthy to let the conversation be and come back again. Just because you get frustrated with each other, doesn't mean that you just be drop the topic and we're never talking about it again. I just feel there's something unhealthy about that. No, we're not going to talk about it. That's, temporarily I get it, but forever and ever, I don't know, that I just feel like you're losing the opportunity to understand another perspective.
I like that.
So-
You're losing the opportunity to learn more about who your spouse is and to learn more about who you are together, which is really a piece of the heart of growth, is uncovering how we're the same and how we're different. That's a part of knowing one another. Even when we meet with God, in our relationship with God, we want to figure out how we're the same, what kinds of things God experiences that we experience and vice versa. But then also, wouldn't we be missing a piece of that if we weren't obviously able to acknowledge that we're very different from God? And so I think that's a healthy place of relationship in any relationship, to say, how are we the same? And also, how are we different?
Definitely. I think that God created us to be who we are. And I think if we, some of those perspectives that we have, if we're just like, okay, we'll just do the same thing, then we're losing who God really made us to be. So
in that stagnancy, that's what we're talking about. We want growth, and same and different brings growth. Whereas if we stop the discussion, if we stonewall the discussion and tuck it away because we don't want to deal with it, or if we get to a place where no difference is okay and we're arguing, then we are kind of blocking the growth. So that's a good perspective. So the last thing we want to share with you is that, most importantly, we'll repeat this again and again, you'll see it in multiple videos, is that we want to hold fast. And so when those samenesses come up, and we can be excited about them, but also when those differences come up, we want to be excited about them. Either way, we can hold fast. We just hold tight to that marriage. We hold hands and we say, this is who God has put together. This is part of who we are. And so we're not obviously talking about really extreme examples of where someone feels unsafe and things, but in your average everyday marriage, we want to be able to hold fast and say, same and different, we're in it together. And that is a place of growth. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.